we're here today to talk a bit about show and tells and Weeknotes. I'm here. My name's Alex May. I'll be one of the presenters, as well as Vicky Mears. Both of us are service designers. Oh, hello.
Sorry.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about show and tells today, and Weeknotes, and we'll be giving our honest accounts of our experiences and lessons learnt. The outcome, hopefully, of this session will be that you'll be able to feel that you can maybe try out hosting a show and tell yourself within your service, and if not, to have a fairly fair understanding of what show and tell entails. And like I said a minute ago, we'll take any questions at the end of this session, because as we present, it's quite difficult for us to see. Well, we can't see the comments bar, so we'll deal with that following.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm just going to get the T's and C's out of the way first of all. So as part of Services Week, we're asked to just mention a little bit of information around Services Week. So I'm just going to do that now. So Services Week is a cross-organisational public sector event series in multiple locations across the UK. So this is a national event, although today's presentation is an internal one. It's supported self-organised week of events to discuss good, accessible, equitable and sustainable public services. A cross-government working group provides a framework to show great work, connect people, demonstrate the value of agile, user-centred, evidence-based approaches. Services Week promotes ways to design government and public services in a better way, and good public services that work well for the users with different access needs, are fair, inclusive and equitable, and are sustainable socially, environmentally and economically. So that was a bit of a mouthful. So that's the T's and C's out of the way.
Cool. So talk a bit about going to show and tells now. So does anyone know what a show and tell is? Has anyone seen a show and tell at all?
I've been to some.
Yeah. Thought you might have done.
I haven't actually.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not like it's my daughter does show and tells at school.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but no, I haven't been to one of yours.
It's all where we're going, Tracy, actually. Yeah. So it's no different, really, in theory, to what's carried out in schools. So you know, sort of bringing something in and talking about it. The concept really is as simple as that, is that we're going to show something that we've done or that we've done and to talk about it further. So that is really the basis of what a show and tell is. I think it states there, actually. Sorry, Vix.
That's okay. So that's what it says on the tin, basically. It's the practice of showing something to an audience and telling them about it. So it's a really good way of being open and transparent. And show and tells really help us to feel more like one team. Obviously, that's one of our council strap lines, and it's a really good way of opening up to our colleagues and the wider audience to let them know what we're up to. So why do we use show and tells? They can be used, dare I say, and Debs, you might want to put your fingers in your ears here, instead of highlight reports. It depends where you are in the business. So if you work in quite an agile way, often they can be used to accompany highlight reports, or, you know, ideally in an ideal world, be used instead of highlight reports. But it all depends where we are as an authority. Benefits of show and tells is that you can show others what you're doing, and it can be others that aren't actually part of the project, but instead of just people that are interested in what you're doing. So that's why we try and open them up to as wide an audience as possible. In a lot of our show and tells, we invite IT ops managers, business partners, CLT and SLT sometimes as well, depending on what we're feeding back. So yeah, they are really open to everybody, and it is just a chance to share what we've been doing.
So why should we do show and tells? So within the way in which we work in an agile project management methodology, we find it helps people stay focused on the users and their needs. It improves collaboration through sharing and discussion, It helps develop relationships within the team and further. Provides pace and agility as part of that agile project management methods, as stated a minute ago. Encourages transparency and openness, so we're talking openly about everything that we've learned and problems that we have, etc. Gives an opportunity for feedback from those that attend, and for those that attend also to comment or raise additional queries concerning what's being presented. I found that beneficial in the past, and yeah, and encourages the wide audience to go and see for yourself. So for them to look into it further, and maybe the wider audience see benefit in what you're doing, what you're showing for them as well, for their business area. So there's a benefit for them there. So what can you include in a show and tell?
So basically you can include everything and anything. There's no sort of hard and fast rules as to what you can include, but obviously you need to bear in mind that you're going to have a certain audience there. And we've got on there, show the thing. So show what you're doing. A lot of what we do in digital is we show wireframes and pathways to things that we have ideas on. And so you could just say, we've got this idea, and often I'll show a wireframe, which is a stick man going, and that sort of process. It doesn't need to be fancy. You don't have to have lots of fancy graphics and things like that. It can just be pictures on a page. You show how far you've come. So often you'll have regular show and tells, which we'll touch on later. And you will show how far you've come from the last show and tell. And it is literally just an update. It's like an update to the team, but a bit more visual. You said we did. So we do an awful lot of user research in what we do in service design. And not just in service design, across the board, because our customers are our key. And we do an awful lot of, we've been out, this is the feedback, so we've actioned the feedback, this is what we've come up with. Good, the bad, the ugly. It's absolutely fine to say things aren't going right. It's absolutely fine to say we've struggled this time. Absolutely fine to say we've had some really challenging conversations in the project. It's all about working out in the open and being honest. So that's really interesting as well. I think at times we're not used to actually saying we're struggling with this, or we've had a few disagreements in the project and it's had to go up for a decision. It's absolutely fine to say that. It's all part of being transparent with what you're doing. All you've learned since the last show and tell. So it's a comparison from the last one. You can say, okay, well, this didn't work. That wireframe didn't work. We scrapped that idea. We're moving on to something else. Or we've now got some stats and some insights. We can show you benefits and developments. Invite others in the wider team to be involved. So this is something that we actively do as part of our projects. So for example, we are a project team. We're not just service designers providing a show and tell. We are actively encouraging our members of the project team to take part in the show and tells and to actually deliver a couple of slides, which at the moment I think it takes a little bit of encouragement. Would you agree with that, Al? Like you've got to sort of coax people into it sometimes, but it really shows involvement and actually credibility within people. We work in multidisciplinary teams, so we actually pinch people from their BAU to get involved with the project, and it's really good to raise that involvement with everybody.
I think it's the ownership, isn't it? It's having the ownership for the show and tell is across the whole project team. In theory, it shouldn't be just. It isn't just us, and so it's a case of definitely when it's come to show and tells for me in the past, I may have been pivotal in creating the slides for the presentation, but the project team need to input into the said slides collaboratively, and also the delivery should be, or ideally, a collaborative effort, and that also has its benefits in perception as well of the team. So you're working as a one in that presentation. Therefore, you've all got that commitment, you've all got that ownership of the thing that you're doing, and it's portrayed that way as well, and it's quite powerful. I think I've done it previous where I've had the members of the team state the customer feedback the user sort of statements that we've captured through discovery, and that allows them, almost by reading it, to have ownership of the problems that are being faced as well. So yeah, it's something quite powerful about co-presenting. So so where are we, and when do we do the show and tells? So at the start of any show and tell, we would start off with sort of easing the audience into understanding at what point the project's at. So we do this by using our double diamond diagram here, which is something that the Design Council generated and we as service designers follow. So it's a project methodology alongside Agile, and the 4 sections are discovery, definition, develop and deliver, but I'm not here to talk about that. So the idea here is that we'd state at which point we're at. So it's quite simply, we are here, like there with an arrow. The idea is that we'd also ensure what we're talking about here. So yeah, ideally a show and tell should happen every 2 weeks. That's what's stated, and it shouldn't be down to project milestones, but more timely updates. So again, as we spoke about previous, something doesn't have to be completed for us to present and feed people, fill people in as to where we're at with said product or project. So things we've learnt from presenting over the past couple of years. Don't prepare extra material for the show and tells. Just use what's already been generated. So we would generate a certain number of documents or project artifacts as part of the work you're doing or we're doing, and it's just a case of putting that detail into said slides, either via screenshot with maybe a bit of context around it, a few texts around it. But the idea here is that you should already have said material, and it's just be a case of throwing it into said slides. Shouldn't be that much work involved in it. So don't prep too much on what you're presenting. So yeah, and as we've spoken about quite a bit, show work in progress. So that could be, in our case, something that we are designing or prototyping at the moment, or creating the prototype for, or halfway through the prototyping of, so it could be piecemeal. We've got to this stage at the moment. This is all the stuff that we've walked through. These are the problems we found, etc. But we haven't completed it yet. That's not a problem. It's just an update. Involve the business throughout. We've spoken about that. Show what stage you're at, which is what I said at the start there. Sorry, at the last slide. Include things that you've tried and didn't work out. It's quite key.
Also, we've also learned from trial and error with this stuff that as long as you can give your audience 3 things to take away, that would be considered to be a successful show and tell. So depending on where you are in the project, some show and tells will be enormous because you've gathered problems and things like that. Other show and tells will be literally a 30-minute update. But the key is, as long as you can give your audience 3 key things to take away, that's a sign of a successful show and tell. You talk about new insights. So like I mentioned before, a lot of what we do is user research. So we come back to the audience and say, actually, we were wrong. This is how it is, and this is how people want it to be, or what have you. So original sort of thoughts and theories behind things can be proved wrong by insights, and that's perfectly fine to say we got it wrong, or we were on the wrong lines and now we're on the right lines. It's an evolving thing. Let people know about your show and tell. That's really key. So often in a project we have them every 2 weeks, like I say, at the end of every sprint. Sometimes they're longer, but it's really important to get that message out that you're going to do a show and tell and invite that wider audience with plenty of notice, because we all know what diaries are like, especially in this new world. And you need to try and encourage the business to attend to get buy-in. So that's really important for notice. Know your audience, knowing their knowledge and experience helps. So obviously when you're doing these show and tells, they're not just going to be in to the business that you're working in, they're going to be to your wider audience as well. So often you'll need to recap on what you've done and give some context around the project before you actually go into the nitty-gritty of the show and tell. And always start by recapping on the challenge or what the vision is. So at the beginning of the project, we create a challenge statement in terms of what we want to achieve from the project, and we always recap that at the beginning of the show and tell. So this is our challenge, this is where we're at in respect to the double diamonds. That's what we use, that's our bread and butter. But if you guys were doing one, then you can just say this is the problem, this is what we're trying to solve. So it works sort of the same way. And ultimately, be yourself. So we put this one in here because you don't have to be a hard and fast presenter. You know, you are who you are. Some people find it okay to present, other people find it the most excruciating thing in the world. But ultimately, if you're yourself, it will be fine. You will make mistakes, you will fluff lines, but that's just what we do. You know, it's absolutely natural to show your nerves. That's okay. But most importantly, get the information across to your audience in whichever way you feel best.
So yeah, so what resource and location for a show and tell are fairly pivotal, make a hell of a difference. So pre-COVID, sorry, we were likely to do more face-to-face meetings. Oh, I miss them. So it was always important to get a big enough room booked far in advance, book out a TV screen, have display boards available to present. The idea would be that we'd plaster the walls with all the artifacts that we've generated as part of the said project or said work. So I'd have my huge process maps up, or all the data analysis printed out. The idea was to fill the room with information, so that following said presentation, people could look more into the detail as they were leaving, or we could reference said documents instead of it being fully on a presentation like we are today. Evidently, that's not possible at the moment, and it might not be for a little while. So it's trying to now think about how we present virtually through the use of PowerPoint or other. So there's a need to be more inventive, or a bit more inventive with the slides in which we're given, we're showing, and also to include maybe a bit more information than what would be typically approved as a PowerPoint presentation. So it's a difficult balance. And going forward, I think we're going to find presentations full stop are going to be quite interesting when we eventually return to physical offices, because there'll be a need for that crossover of virtual and face-to-face. So it would be the additional complication of ensuring that what's available in the room is also available to those attending virtually. So that's going to be quite a challenge going forward. So I've got an example of a show and tell that I produced a couple of years back now, which centers around showing problem statements following the user research and analysis that was made as part of the discovery phase of the double diamond. So I'll quickly walk through this. Hopefully it won't be too painful. He says there's quite a few slides, so I'll flip through quite a few of them. So yeah, in the room, the setup of the room for this one in particular, I had, like I said before, I had a full process map printed out, a far larger document than A4, that was stuck on the wall, this meeting room. I had a whiteboard with all the problems listed from the discovery, so all the problems from the customer about this key piece of work, and also other documents scattered around. Yeah, so this is to do with accident incident forms as part of a transformational piece back in 2018. Initially, we would had, like Vicky said earlier on, we'd have had a challenge statement here, but This project was slightly differently sort of worded, or the initiative really was to make something offline available offline and taken away paper-based process. So the challenge statement wasn't really used in this scenario. So a bit of background here about how we've got here, what our responsibility is, and then a bit about what we did. Again, like I said, this is the double diamond I was showing here, indicating where we were at with this project. So here it states with the problem definition. What was found via discovery. So I did a bit about the process maps that has been generated in decision making and so on. A bit about who I engaged with. So it's all the people there, all the areas and so on that I had discussions with. It wouldn't be me without a drawing, so I did a little drawing from the problems that were the problems that I captured as part of the discovery piece. So sort of quick way of getting that across there. And then I went through what we call problem statements. So these are generated as part of our service design processes. Here's to show the problem, the consequence of the problem, and the problem statement itself, which is a call to action. How might we? So I did this for each area or each problem that was captured, all the prioritized problems that were captured, and followed each up with proof of where that came from. So it's always more powerful to use quotes following research, and I've done this for each problem statement. So I'll wing through. In this case, the problem statement was followed up by an observation. It was generated through an observation that I made as part of my my research. So in this case, loads of paper forms, all very different. That's a problem. And it's quite key, like I have done here, is to use as many images as you possibly can. So this is me actually. This is where I was speaking to a library manager. She was showing me all of the lovely paperwork on accident incidents, nice big folders. So it's quite key when you are trying to convey a problem to have the backing of a visual of the actual problem itself, which is quite difficult at times. But yeah. And then I did a bit of analysis of what we can learn from others, why recreate the wheel as such. And in this case here, you can see that sort of slide is not your typical PowerPoint slide. There's quite a lot of information on there. And again, this goes back to what I was saying previous. This presentation was being used as a sort of step to try and gain funding to make this change. So this is sort of, I suppose, part of a what's the word? Not a project brief, but almost. Yeah, the idea of this was to gain buy-in from senior leadership to finance the furthering of this project. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but I think that was my fault. So these slides do have a lot of detail on them, was what I was getting at, more so than what you'd have in a standard presentation. So I was stating here, I was looking at different websites, different councils' websites, and picking out what they did well and what they didn't do well, and what we could take and use. So I sort of bashed through all of those there. And then in this presentation, there's a bit of data analysis as well, which is the meat really. And it's important for us to always follow up with cold hard facts really to help us gain buy-in. So there's graphs here showing the demand, where it is coming from, and also the current costs. So this was generated via process mapping that I produced, and the sort of times, we estimated the times for each action, the customer and myself, and calculated what those actions cost, and also understood a bit about what the estimated savings would be if you were to put in a non-paper-based function. Again, this is to help gain buy-in, hopefully help gain buy-in going forward to show the possible cost savings that I had. And following that, got a options list of what we do going forward with this project. So this is problematic for me, this slide, because it solutionizes, which is what we shouldn't do, and state an E form throughout. But yeah, that's the idea. That's all the idea, is that these are the options. Please select one. At the end, I'd give additional information. So if anyone's interested, this is the link to go to see a bit further about the project and what's going on, and then what's next. So sort of informing them what the next stages are of said project. And also, I would ask questions at this point. So that was the sort of standard, I suppose, show and tell that we would produce. But yeah, I mean, in that case, it's quite difficult because I think I managed to get only about the audience was quite small in this respect, so it's quite hard to be able to gain buy-in from that one meeting. But I've had for other show and tells where we've managed to get 30 odd people into a room. The benefit of doing things virtually at the moment is that it's more accessible. People are able to attend even if they are, you know, in the shed, like me. So there are benefits of us running these virtually, because before it was a case of everyone needed to be in County Hall maybe that day. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how we go further, how we get on further on when we have to do these cross platforms, sort of virtual and in the room presentations. But yeah, that's it from me on show and tells.
So moving on to Weeknotes now. Has anyone in the audience done a Weeknote or read a Weeknote, knows what they are?
No, not me.
No, that's good.
Others.
You've read others. Okay. So so what are Weeknotes? It says exactly what it does on the tin. So a Weeknote is a blog of your activities or experiences over the course of a week, created with a view of sharing to a wider audience. So this is what I've done, and that's basically what a Weeknote is. I think of it personally as an honest diary entry about your working week, but I know others treat it as a different means of communication. There are loads of different styles that you can use to Weeknote. So you can use a blog, which is my favourite method, vlogs or sketches. And we try and be as inventive as we possibly can be with this stuff, because it can be a bit boring sometimes just to read reams and reams and reams of words.
So I moved on quite quickly.
That's okay.
Oh no, yeah. No, sorry. That's very rude of me. So yeah, following on from what Vix was saying when I really interrupted her, yeah, it is quite a commitment. It can be seen as quite a commitment for us to produce Weeknotes every week, and it might be the case that we don't produce them every week because we haven't got much to feedback or to talk about. Maybe a week. I know Vicky had a week last week where she was back to back with meetings, but you can always turn it into talking about your week in a different way, stating about. Vicky sort of stated a bit about the amount of meetings you had and what the problems and challenges that faced, but also there's the ability for us to say, do you know what, not going to do on this week, there's nothing to communicate. You can do a retro, so it could be a case that you look back and go, right, the project that I did, or this piece of work that I was doing, this is what we did, this is how we did it, and these are the benefits, these are the challenges we faced, etc. So you can either, there's no limitation to what you can and can't report back in a Weeknote. But in some cases, if you are going stale, then we have all in our team started to differentiate or change it a little bit in between the your standard blog posts. So in this case here, we've got the fun angles. So a blog post with music videos describing what had happened each day. So Vix has done one on that. It's lovely. About New Radicals.
Shout to the 90s there, New Radicals.
Yeah, very good. Can't stand that song myself. And then you've got the another member of our team that decided to come up with the sea shanty to describe his week. So that was quite impressive. And I think he did a video for that as well, didn't he, Vix?
He did, yeah, he did. And if you get a chance to see it, it's on Yammer. There's harmonising. It's very clever.
Is that
yes, there is
Oh my God.
harmonising. So it's worth a look.
Okay. So with Weeknotes, I suppose it's quite important for you to understand who your audience is. They can be from one person to their team, can be from a leader to their team, can be from teams to leaders, sponsors, or stakeholders, or from one team to other teams. And that will frame really the tone of your Weeknote as well, to understand who you're sending it to or who it's going to.
So what to include and what not to include in a Weeknote? I would just say this is common sense, really. And I wouldn't worry too much about the structure. So Alex has touched on, we use different styles. You know, one of our colleagues at the moment is trying to do a different type of Weeknote every week. I'm not that inventive. I just use them as a roundup, and my favourite style is a blog. Sometimes there isn't that much to say, and that's absolutely fine. You know, some Weeknotes I've seen are just a couple of paragraphs or even a picture. Another one of our colleagues had just put a bottle of gin on her Weeknote and just put, I'm coping, and that, you know, that basically summed up her week. They can be light-hearted. There's no hard and fast rules. It doesn't have to be too worky. It can be really reflective. It can be quite light-hearted. It can be exactly what you want it to be. And if you treat your Weeknotes like a burden, they'll feel like a burden. So the reason why that is in there is that, particularly in service design and digital, we are encouraged to Weeknote every week as part of what we do to raise awareness of what we do. However, like Alex said, sometimes you might just might not feel like it. You might have had a real dreadful week and you are in the mindset of, I haven't really got anything to feed back. That's fine. You know, they are your Weeknotes. They aren't for somebody else. They are for you. Is it okay to name names? Not without permission. So yeah, it's very important that we don't name names without permission. Also, know your audience. People you're writing about might be reading the Weeknote, so I use initials a lot of the time, and I use general circumstances and situations. I don't really go into detail. I don't think it's appropriate to go into detail with a Weeknote unless it's something that's really, really positive. And like I say, sometimes you have a bad week, and it's okay to write about that. You know, it's okay to say, I've had a rubbish week, or I'm not feeling great this week, or this went wrong. And they can be cathartic, particularly for me. Like I say, I use them as a bit of a diary to write about my week and how the week went. Other people don't use them for that. Other people just write specific parts about projects or what's happening in their week. You can use jokes in the right environment. That's absolutely fine. You know, like I say, Alex and I, our main strapline throughout all of this is be yourself. You know, you've got a personality, so that's fine to let that show. And use, you know, when you have something to say it, but it doesn't have to be every week. You know, just write one when you feel like it, and that's, I think, is a great start to write, to do, you know, for starting Weeknotes, is write when you feel like it. And a lot of our colleagues at the moment that are just getting into it just do it when they feel like they can, or they have something to say.
I think it's important to have that human element, isn't it, to be yourself, because that makes it more engaging. If you're just writing about, this is what I did all week, it's not going to pull people in. It's not going to be of interest, as much interest as,
yeah,
you know, I'm a human, these are the problems I've had during my week, outside of maybe working week, or that impacted on your working week, you know,
yeah,
especially with what we're going through at the moment. So
yeah. With
yeah,
homeschooling,
it's really important. With homeschooling, well,
yeah.
let's not go there.
So what are the benefits of Weeknoting? Share all you're doing and experiencing, and I think that's part also of what we've touched on with the show and tells. You know, it's about raising awareness of what you're doing and working out in the open. And like Alex said, you know, I did a Weeknote last week about when is work not work, and in terms of, I've had a week of basically meetings, and I haven't really done any what I would consider to be service design work, but in actual fact, that is work. Meetings are work, and that's how we work now. So it's about a mindset change, and I wrote about that. So that's just an example of some of the things that you can use. It's great for buy-in internally and externally, particularly internally for our guys, because it raises awareness of what we do and the purpose of our jobs. Also externally, we in service design, we publish ours on Twitter. And we always share with our design community our week notes as well. So that's quite a nice way of raising awareness and getting feedback, and also encourages other people to get involved. Like I say, creates conversation, and using those sort of platforms to do that is a really good way of getting your message out there. Create new connections with other departments. So in one of my week notes, I wrote about the library order and collect service, and I've had some really nice feedback and comments about it. In actual fact, one of the parish councils has contacted me and says, "Oh, we'd really like to do that with our parish libraries. How do we get hold of you?" So that's been really nice. Extending that to a wider audience. Sharing your experiences and show the human element to your week. You don't have to, it's not a confession, but just be yourself. And this is like the message throughout all of our presentations, particularly that Alex and I do, is about be yourself, tell it like it is, and just work in the open. That's the main thing.
I think just to add on that point about making new connections with the departments, it's also, if you're sharing it to a wider audience on the likes of Twitter or Medium, which we'll talk about in a bit, you can sort of gain engagement from those outside of the organisation.
Definitely.
I've had discussions with other councils about certain work that I've been working on because they've seen the week notes, so it's beneficial. That's a massive benefit to them.
So here's just an example of one of my week notes, that one that I did when I came back from Christmas. Like I said a couple of times, my preferred method of week noting is writing, but you can week note in lots and lots of different ways.
Oh, I thought we would talk about it a bit more. Sorry.
That's okay.
So I'm not such a creative writer as Vix, so I started using sketch notes to do my week notes. This is me producing one here. So I found sketch note. I've been fascinated with sketch notes for a while anyway, and found them quite beneficial for drawing people in, literally, bringing people into something. And I've also find it quite cathartic, a bit like Vix was saying about her written notes, and to sort of go through that process and to map out my week in a visual. I find that I get quite a bit of feedback on them, so they're obviously engaging enough to draw people in and create conversations. So does what they set out, they do what they set out to do, and also as per written week note for me. I won't go into sketchnoting too much, but in this case, it was a grey week. We didn't see sun for a whole week, so I grayscaled this one. Whilst previous, normally I'd add colour, but the key thing here for me is to make sure that I'm pointing out or highlighting the main points with different type, or for it to sort of segregate and look different. This, for example, was a week where we were making progress on creating or prototyping, as you can see there, prototyping a upload proof for housing for our customer base. So I was trying to show the sort of way in which that would happen. So the old way of working to the new way of perceived new way of working with the prototypes that we were generating. So that's the concept there. So as said previous, that week, that was a sort of look at a piece of work I was working on rather than a step-by-step of how my week had been.
Just as a side note, I'd also like to say that you don't have to be as good as sketching as Alex to do a sketch note. Don't let his skill put you off. We have had others that have done them.
Yeah. No. No, I mean, and it doesn't matter. I mean, the key thing is that any sort of visual, really, it's that human element again, I think.
Yeah.
You know, a hand drawing seems fairly human, the same as your written notes, where week notes, where you're sort of saying, hey, you know, where's the sun? No,
Yeah.
it's a terrible
Yeah,
example,
exactly.
but but sort of add a human element to it. It's no different to that, I think. But yeah, the key thing with all these week notes and sketch notes is to share them, you know. So again, it's key to remember who your audience is, and also if you're allowed to share said information on said platforms. Now, we're quite fortunate in our team because we've signed the digital declaration, which allows us, or should enable us, to share our learnings with other authorities. And our managers, as Vic said, are very they want us to create week notes. They want us to share our workings. And in theory, other authorities that have signed this digital declaration are sharing said learnings back to us. So we should be sharing for people to learn from us, and vice versa. So that's our key drivers for ourselves. But if it's just a case of they want to share them internally, you've got your SharePoint sites, team sites, you've got your Yammer, you've got your Teams channels, or externally, in our case, we use a product called Medium, or started using that for blog posts and sharing those blog posts from Medium onto Twitter, all free, and possibly the use of there's Slack there. So Slack's like an external version, a different version of, well, it's like Teams in its ways, but a lot of external companies use Slack to communicate or cross partnership work as well. So it may be of benefit for you or your team to share on Slack. So that's our presentation. Do we have any questions at all? Tumbleweed.
Always the case. Always the way.
No?
Stunned us into silence.
Oh, that feels like a bad thing.
I don't think I have. I think you've kind of answered the things as you went along, actually. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tracy.
Tracy, have you ever done a week note?
No.
Have you thought about it? Do you think you might do them now?
I might. I like the cathartic element of it. I think it's quite nice sometimes to do that. So yeah, I will think about that. Yeah.
If you want to have a look at some examples, there's some really good examples on Yammer on the All Communities page. If you want to get some inspiration, there's some quite good ones on there if it's something you're thinking about doing.
Yeah, thank you.
I think talking about honesty, I think I had one where my head had blown off. So
yeah.
one of my sketch notes.
We all have those weeks.
One of those weeks. Any other questions at all?
Well, I was just curious about the relationship or not between show and tells and highlight reports that Vicky was mentioning at the beginning. Because I think it is an interesting thing to reflect on. Because I wouldn't say I've done show and tells in the way that you're describing them, Alex, but I've done similar things in the past with exactly the same intent and purpose to try and bring as many people into understanding what the changes are, socialize those, you know, take on comments, criticisms, and the good things as well as early as possible to try and shape the project and move it forward. And there's something absolutely different for me about that, and then saying, just, you know, we've got enough resources, we're on budget, we need more resources to keep this going, and the kind of overall management piece which comes with a highlight report, which in largely is not very often very good representation of things like the progress and whether the project is actually delivering to its aims and objectives. It may have some commentary on that, but these things are always much more difficult to kind of assess, but much more about when we've got so many different things going on, have we got all the right people, do we need to move them from one to another? So I'm just curious to explore if that if those things are also part of the show and tell, that kind of really boring managerialist stuff, which much as you know, I try to shy away from it. Eventually, when you get to doing large things for the whole council, trying to save £10 million, we do need to do a bit of that to make sure we're on track and give people trust and confidence. And that can come from going to show and tells, but we can't go to show and tell about all the different projects across all the councils because we'd just be maxed out. So I don't know. I'm just curious to talk about that as we've been touching on these kind of things today.
Yeah, I think in terms of when we talk about they can replace highlight reports, I think in terms of when we talk about replacements, I think we mean by that is the progress on the project, which is what you would put on a highlight report in terms of the project development. All the other, like, as you refer to as boring stuff, budgets and all the other important stuff that the bigwigs make the decisions on, that would need to be done on a separate platform, definitely. But as part of an update, which is what we include in a highlight report to the PM, we would say as part of service design, it's all in the show and tells. However, it's that crossover that we have at the moment, isn't it, with how do we cope with an organisation which is really massive with loads and loads of different projects where people have to sign off lots and lots of different things in a meeting, probably that's only an hour long. When you can't, for example, the board can't go to every single show and tell every 2 weeks to keep up to date with the developments. So I think in terms of that, like you say, it should be separated, and it often isn't for public ears, is it? You know, the decisions that are made are you know, management decisions. But in terms of the progress and the project developments and the insights that are happening within the project, I think they could replace the information that is put on a highlight report in terms of updates and things. So
the difference is that nobody involved with the project should find out anything new from a highlight report in the sense of what I'm talking about them being.
Absolutely,
because they're a tool for functions of executing the managerialist need to manage resources, basically, whether that's monetary, you know, physical manifestations of the IT infrastructure or whatever. Okay. I think that's a good way to think about it. I think we could do some more work on implementing that then across the piece for people.
Yeah, that would be great.
Good.
Cool. Any further questions at all? I mean, if you do think of anything following this presentation, then do feel free to get in contact with Vix or I. We'll be happy to give you a bit of time to talk through what we do. Definitely, yeah, we'd love to help. So thanks for attending today's session as part of Services Week. We hope you enjoyed it, and you've got some takeaways for yourself there to work on if you wish to take up on Weeknotes or show and tells. And just a little bit of boring stuff to finish. We've got a feedback form that we'd like you to complete, and if that's okay with everybody. And don't forget to check out our schedule of events as well for what's happening for the rest of the week. There's some really delicious things happening during the week, so it'd be really good for you to get involved in those as well. Yeah, so feel free to click on the short feedback form there. That'd be amazing if we could have some feedback on how we've got on, and help us improve for future. But and we'll work on our informal presentation style, Alex. What are you talking about? Unbelievable. Okay. Thank you all. All right. Thanks very much for coming. It's been great to see you all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
guys. Bye.
Bye.